Well, welcome to Monday Night Sports. This is Rick DuPree, your host, and we're just coming off a live broadcast at the Holgate Church of Christ, where we brought you a day of remembrance and awards, remembering the 54th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. So we are live here at the Holgate Church, and we're going to bring you a special edition, live edition. Well, it's always live, but on location of Monday Night Sports. And it's interesting. We the last several weeks we've talked a little bit about the Rooney Rule and different things going on in the NFL, and we want to continue that focus today because there has been an update to the Rooney Rule, and in just a moment we'll bring on award-winning and former USA Today, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal journalist David DuPree to get his take on it. But let me just go to. I want to read a little bit of this, to you, and just so you kind of have a sense of kind of the Rooney Rule and its impact. So a couple of things. The Rooney Rule initially was adopted in 2003. And it was based on recommendations from the league's workplace diversity committee. The initial focus was to really try to increase the number of minorities in head coaching positions. So that was what they were hoping to do. And with that, how successful have they been? That's probably debatable, but we'll get into that with David DuPree. In 2009, the policy was amended, and it included general manager jobs, equivalent front office positions, requiring that each team interview a minimum of 2 external, what they called minority candidates. That has since, in November of 2020, the team owners approved a proposal rewarding teams who developed minority talent that went on to become GMs or head coaches across the league. If a team lost a minority executive or coach to another team, that team would receive a third-round compensatory pick for 2 years. So they put some things in place. In 2021, the NFL approved changes that required every team now to interview at least 2 external minority candidates for open head coaching positions and at least 1 external minority candidate for a coordinator job position. And at least 1 minority and or female candidate must be interviewed for senior level positions. So they've been adding different layers to this, but at the end of the day, when you are requiring teams that may not want to, for whatever reason, they say, I don't have know any qualified candidates and what have you, force them to bring somebody in for an interview. You're going to run into what we have run into this year with Brian Flores, a Miami coach who was fired. And basically the Giants, from everything that it appears the Giants had made a decision on a coach, but then brought him after the fact. So that is what it is. Now, there has been an update to the Rooney Rule, which is what we're going to primarily focus on, this evening. But one of those things is women will now be included in all Rooney Rule requirements in the NFL. So all 32 teams will be required to hire a diverse person, which is a female or member of an ethnic or racial minority, to serve as an offensive assistant. So that's the update to the rule. A couple of flaws in my mind. Number one, I think you have women and racial minorities are 2 different categories, and now you're kind of lumping them together. And then secondly, you're saying that you got to hire somebody to serve as an offensive assistant coach. So yeah, it's bringing some candidates in, and the thought is, okay, bring somebody in and they get the experience, and then would be in the future a head coaching candidate. Why the offensive side? And the NFL saying, well, a majority of the coaches that have been hired here, in the last few years have been on the offensive side of the ball. But what happens if you have somebody who is a standout defensive candidates. So, it's a flawed it's a flawed system. It's a flawed process, I should say. And so, somehow, they're going to have to make some changes, to that to get it where it really is effective. But with that said, I want to just take a moment. We're going to bring on David DuPree, award-winning journalist from USA Today, and also the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. And I want to get David's take on the rule and kind of what he feels like. Do we have David? I think we have him, but I am not hearing him.
You're not hearing me?
Oh, now I see you and hear you.
Say,
what's up, big dog? How you doing?
How's it going?
Good. So I you probably heard kind of my intro there, and let's talk about the Rooney Rule in general. I don't want to specifically talk about the updates yet, but just the Rooney Rule in general. Conversation we had a few weeks ago, your feeling was, and you can elaborate on this, but until the ownership changes hands and we have more ownership that is more representative of our culture, we're not going to see, a huge amount of change. Kind of where are you on that overall?
I haven't changed at all. It's ludicrous. If you want to affect change, you have to make the people you're trying to change want to do something. You can't make them do anything. And the part of the new, most people think that the new rules or the amendment is a good thing and it helps. But again, all it is doing is telling you what to do. And the thing about that whole thing that I thought, first of all, when they say offensive side of the ball, what side of the ball do you think Mike Tomlin was on? Defense. So, that's to start with, that's ridiculous. But the thing if you read the fine print, there's one place in the new thing that says they'll be compensated by some fund if they hire somebody with a minority. Now, so you are paying somebody to do something. If you want to do it, this is what you do. You don't pay anybody a nickel. You say, if you do it, you're going to get a first-round draft pick. You're going to get an extra first-round draft pick if you do it. Right. That's all you got to say. You don't have to say, we're going to pay you to do it. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But guess what?
Right.
The teams that do going to get extra first-round pick. I know that.
Right. Yeah.
So, and you can't make people do anything. And the Rooney Rule, as is to make the amendments they make are like, it reminds me of instant replay. You can challenge this, you can't challenge that. Oh, we may have made a mistake, but you're out of challenges. You either replay everything or you replay nothing.
Well, yeah, exactly. Good point.
It's the same way with the Rooney Rule. You either educate the people and say, you must hire people. If you don't want to, this is what's going to happen to you. Not, and it's just. And David, you said something a moment ago I think is good. And so okay, you don't do it, there's not necessarily a punishment, but if you do it, there's an incentive. You get something. That changes the structure of it. But the other thing I think, and you and a few weeks ago, you and Steve Kelly had great conversation, but talked about until you see a shift in ownership where it is more reflective of racial minorities and women and what have you, and so here's the thing though. Now you're talking about, I mean, there's, I don't know what the latest is, but they're saying Denver, maybe a team that is up for sale, but they're saying that could be $4 billion. And I know Jay-Z was one of the people mentioned. He got rid of his interest in the Brooklyn Nets. But now you have Jeff Bezos and others that are, at the table supposedly. So, again, ownership can be prohibitive. And then, you talk about kind of the good old boys network and a family and nepotism, what have you. Well, if ownership is in a family, okay, maybe that owner dies, but it's staying with the family. And so unless you have a family member that doesn't want to continue that on, so the likelihood of a shift in ownership, is probably way down the road. It's I'm gonna tell you a little something. I hope people understand the analogy.
You know who David Kelly is, a TV producer. He's millions of shows. And he had a show on called Ally McBeal. And his wife is the actress, Michelle Pfeiffer. And they happened to be at a Broadway play of Rent with the famous black actor Jesse L. Martin, who became Lieutenant Ed Green on so-and-so. And she turned to her husband and said, "You have to get him on Ally McBeal. I don't care what you do, but get him on the show." So he put him on the show and made him the white Ally McBeal's boyfriend.
Right,
okay,
right.
He's your boyfriend, a black guy and a white girl, because somebody got in his ear and said, "This guy got talent. Use him." That's what has to happen with the owner. Somebody on his staff, in his house, he's hears somebody say, "Dad, I know you're a racist pig, but that guy's your coach." And I think you better at least interview this guy if you want to win. You can't make people, an outsider can't make anybody do anything, but someone close to somebody can influence somebody into doing what is the right thing. And I think that's what it takes. Like we say, okay, let's say Jay-Z or Oprah or Jordan get enough money, get it together, and they buy a team. What if they interview and they find out, damn, the best coach I've interviewed is a white dude, but I can't hire him. If I hire him, every black person in the world gonna run me out of town. You can't tell people what to do. You have to let them see this is a light. And it does take time. Now, if you do have some minority ownership, at least you have a better chance of getting here. But the way it is now, they're just going around and around in circles. And it's just not, it's like, look what happens in Tampa Bay. Aaron retires. The second he retires, Todd Bowles, you the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Who happens to be black. Because he was next in line. They're saying, why should we interview somebody? We have somebody right here who want to be a coach. So that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
You didn't go through a process. Well, he's black, so we don't have to do that.
Right.
I agree. But what if that person was Caucasian? You get just the Rooney Rule. Whatever you add rule to something, it's just, like say take the game of football. I go out for a pass. You beat me. I grab you and tackle you. That's against the rules. Here's your penalty. What is the penalty if you don't hire a black person? There ain't no penalty. There ain't no penalty. And if I was a owner today, I'd interview every black person I could find and say, "Dan, you came in second best." I'd make sure I had a black assistant to the second assistant to the third assistant somewhere in my thing. But then I interview as many as I want to. You can meet the Rooney Rule without ever hiring a black person or a minority.
Exactly. And now the new shift or new change to the rule, the addition to the rule now is that you have to bring on, and they're saying it starts right now, starts immediately. You have to bring on, and again, I think women and racial minorities in particular are two different categories, and so now part of the problem is you have historically had this problem of having a lack of color. And when I say having a lack of color, primarily African American, but having a lack of color. But now you're throwing women in that pool as well and saying either or. Now you've got women and black, for example, vying for a position. And I think you need to make a commitment that we want to have more women involved. We want to have more black and other people of color involved. And then, as you said, David, at the end of the day, they've got to be qualified. The Tampa Bay example is a great one because what if their top assistant, a guy you always want to groom people from within the organization. They know the system, they know the organization. You groom them. Hey, he's ready to take over. She's ready to take over, whatever the case may be. And what if that person would have been Caucasian? What if they would, And now you're catching all kinds of hell because of it. And so I think you hit the nail on the head. And again, if you just joined us, you're listening to Monday Night Sports, award-winning journalist David DuPree joining me and talking about the Rooney Rule and kind of the flaws in the Rooney Rule and these new shifts, or new additions, I should say, not shifts, but new adds to the rule. And so, Dave, the other thing I think is important, you brought up something, and that was that, okay, you're talking about some fund that's set aside, and okay, so you're not really saying the teams, you don't really have to pay for the first year or two. We got a fund to make this okay.
Yeah.
And then secondly, you bring somebody in, and if the rest of that coaching staff, are they going to resent this individual? Well, the team was made to bring you in, and so I just think it sets up that for a team dynamic. When I say a team, again, not necessarily talking about the players, but that certainly is a part of it, but that team environment that you want in any workplace. And now you have someone who everybody knows the only reason you're here is because the league is saying you have to be here. And guess what? Team ain't even paying you. It's coming from a fund from the league. So you aren't really, you're here for a year or two. Then so I just think there's so many flaws in the effort to make this happen. Your take on it.
You're right. I'm gonna give you two little things that will I think that the viewers or listeners might get a kick out of, things that I've been able to just find because I know people. Yeah. This is why I like Tom Brady. Politics aside, okay. Mm-hmm. This is why I like Tom Brady. Tom Brady told them, "I'm thinking about coming out of retirement, okay, but I can't play for Aaron's. He doesn't, And so they said, I know that. Well, we're thinking about when he's thinking about da. We're thinking about Todd Bowles. He said, if Bowles is the coach, I'm coming back. Mm. So now you have, because the point of the whole story is Tom Brady cares about one thing: winning. He don't give a crap about nothing else, and he knows he can play for Todd Bowles. They got a good relation, that kind of stuff. And the fact that Bowles is black is just, coincidental. But it was funny that he said, okay, Aaron can't be there. They said, well, we're thinking about, are you okay with Bowles? Yeah, I'm okay with him, And the other thing is, I think we always say that whites, I don't like to say whites because I just don't like that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I think we as black people think if we educate white people, then everything will be okay. Well, we need to educate ourselves also and understand one thing that I've learned in my Hall of Fame career that you failed to mention, but that's okay, don't even worry about it, is why are white owners afraid to hire a black person as a coach? And the answer is right there with Brian Flores. Because if you have to fire him for any reason, you're going to get hell. If you got to fire a black person, you are going to catch hell. So I can avoid that hell by not hiring one. Brian Flores is the example. He's a good coach, all that kind of stuff. But look at all the crap that they're facing because they fired him. We don't know. We don't know all that goes on. I don't care what anybody says. It's like a man and woman. You don't know what goes on in their bedroom. You don't know what happened between Miami and Brian Flores. And I refuse to believe under any circumstance that team fired him because he was black. There's something there that we just don't know. And I'm not saying that he did anything, but there's something there because you can't get rid of good coaches. No team wants to get rid of a good coach. So we have to be careful. The biggest fear these owners have is I'm not going to put up with a backlash if I got to get rid of him. I'm going to put up with it now for not hiring him, but I'm not going to go through that crap.
Sure. But Dave, I would also say this, is that's as an owner, that's my prerogative. If I feel like for whatever reason, things just aren't working out anymore. So I'll give you a great example. Back in 2004, I started with the Seattle Sonics and Nate McMillan was the coach. And Nate, which turned out to be his final year with the Sonics. And the preseason prognosticators are saying, Nate was going to be gone by Christmas. The Sonics weren't very good. They were going to be gone by Christmas. Opening night down in LA against the Clippers, who were not that good. And the Sonics lose by, I believe it was 20. And then they were saying, oh, Nate's going to be gone by Thanksgiving. Well, guess what? The team went on and then won, I think it was like, 12 of the next 15 games or whatever. And turned out, they won, their division. They I think played San Antonio in either the conference finals, semifinals, or what have you. Had a great team. But Nate still left after that year, and they parted ways. And, for whatever reason, like you say, we don't know the ins and outs of what's going on. My point in all that is this, is that there are going to be good coaches sometimes that for whatever reason, and I know this is a somewhat of a cop-out, they're not a fit. There's something with the direction that the organization wants to go. Is Bruce Arians a good coach? Yeah, he's a good coach. But guess what? There was something between him and Brady, and so guess what? He's at a point now where he's retirement age and what have you. But I mean, so I think you make a good point, David, is that you never know kind of all the ins and outs of what's going on. And the fact that Brian Flores was fired doesn't mean he's a bad coach. But as an owner, you should have that prerogative to say, you know what, this isn't working anymore, and I'm going to go a different direction without, like you said, without it facing a level of scrutiny that is unrealistic and unfair. But the flip side of that is that, how do we? I think this is the crux of the Rooney Rule. How do you create a process or opportunities for individuals that really, these owners aren't looking at for the most part?
It's tough. I'll give you. It's the culture of a team that sets the standard. It's like the coach of the Celtics right now. What's his name?
Why am I drawing a blank?
Uda Beck.
I know. Okay. Yeah, I'll look it up. Go ahead, keep talking. I'll look it up.
You realize the significance of that? This is the Boston Celtics. That is the third black coach they have hired. The third. Russell, Udoka. Casey, and now they have hired. You can't question them. They fired black coach, a white coach, a white coach, a black coach. They don't care. They don't care. And that's why I come back to the other one is Vince Lombardi, my favorite coach of all time. When they asked him how many black players are on your team, he said, "How the hell do you expect me to know? I don't know who's black and who's white." That's the way it should be. The Celtics, who've been in the same family over and over, even when they were sold the same thing, they don't care. They want to win. And if a team wants to win, they're going to do the right thing. And if they don't care, if they have another agenda, they're going to be stuck in a wheel that's like a mouse. You're going around and around in the wheel.
David, you bring up a good point. If you just joined us, you're listening to Monday Night Sports. I'm Rick DuPree, your host, along with David DuPree, Hall of Fame and award-winning writer, retired writer, formerly of the USA Today, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, among others. But anyway, it's when you talk about Boston, as you know, a great relationship. I met Casey in large part because of your relationship with Casey when he came out here to coach the Sonics. But Casey said something to me I'll never forget. He said, we were talking about kind of, America and racism, what have you. He said, Rick, he said, when I was in Boston in the late 50s, early 60s and what have you, Boston, as it still is to a certain degree, like everywhere in America, was very racist. He said, there were players on this team that we did nothing outside of play basketball together. He said, however, when we crossed that door threshold to the locker room, we became family. And it showed because in 8 of his 9 years, they won the NBA title. And so what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, if a franchise is concerned about winning and that's their ultimate goal, it doesn't matter the color of the skin of their players or the coaches or whatever. And again, as an owner, you should have the right to bring in who you feel is the right fit, the person for your franchise.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I know from all my travels, the city of Boston has a bad reputation amongst black people. Like take just one quick example, Anthony Davis, who comes out and says, or his father came out and said, "We're not going to go to Boston. If they trade for me, I'm not going to resign with them because of the racial situation there." Well, are you going to punish a team for what the city does? You cannot. Boston can be bad or whatever you want to say, but you can't question the Celtics' intent on their hiring, on their everything else, and their dedication, like Casey says, of how a team is supposed to operate. And until you build that culture with an organization, you can't. I think an owner has a right to do or say anything he wants to, but the best owners are the owners who stay out of it. They stay out of it. They're not Jerry Jones. They stay out of it. They are the people who say, "What you need, I'm gonna give you. If it's a black coach, go get the damn black coach. If it's a black quarterback, go get the black quarterback. If my whole team is white, go give me a whole white team. You know, their job is to give you what you want and stand there and take the praise. But that's part of the deal. Take the praise or take the hit. That's part of the deal. And if you get too meddlesome, then you're going to be responsible. You're going to be responsible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, good point. David DuPree, our guest here on Monday Night Sports. We got about 2 minutes left, David. So if you would summarize, if you were the architect, if the NFL came to you and said, okay, what do you think we need to do? What would your advice be to them around the Rooney Rule and trying to increase the level of men and women of color in key positions, head coaching, general manager, those types of positions?
Yusuf, I would have a retreat. I'd say every owner, you're required to go to this retreat. And at that retreat, I would have every black owner from any sport who hired a black coach. I'd have every single Caucasian owner from any sport, baseball manager, football player, bring them and say, tell us why you hired a black person to coach the damn team. And let him tell these people. Let them hear from people who are successful.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. If you hear from your fellow people say, I hired a black coach, I never have a problem. You know, I never have a problem. The only problems I've had with the black coach are the exact same problems I have with the white coach.
There you go. Yeah.
Black coach, you think a black coach is gonna, well, you know, I better not play this guy because so. Who is Mike Tomlin's quarterback? He's not a quarterback. He don't care. He doesn't care. Great coaches don't care. And until the owners understand, you want to win, but you want to tell your team how to win. No, let the people know what they're doing. Do what they're supposed to do. Have a retreat and bring in every single white owner who's ever hired a black person, and sit down with all these NFL owners and tell them, this is why I hired a black person. This is why. And if the reason is because he was the best one, had nothing to do with black, so be it. If the reason was because I had to follow the Rooney Rule, so be it. But hear it, listen to it. You know, let the people who have been through it educate those who haven't been through it.
Yeah. And you made this point earlier. I mean, hearing from their peers, the people on the inside, and in this case, this is their peer, someone, you know, who certainly has experienced what they're experiencing. And then I think also, as you said, if you have people on the inside that are saying, hey, you know what, Eric Bieniemy is the best candidate out there. We need to go get him. We need to make him a head coach, you know, whatever the case may be. I would assume they would tend to listen more. David, we are out of time, man. I always appreciate you taking time to join me. I like the collage in the background there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, we'll have to connect again and bring you back on. But appreciate your perspective, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
It's always a pleasure, Rick. Always a pleasure.
All right, thank you. That is David DuPree, Hall of Fame award-winning writer, retired and enjoying life here on Monday Night Sports. That does it for us. I'm Dupe, your host. Don't go anywhere. Lidline Sports is next right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed our live broadcast from the Holgate Street Church of Christ as they are commemorating, celebrating, honoring folks here at the 54th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. Well, that does it for me. Until next week, peace and God bless.